Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure and my honor to officially welcome you all to the 2017-2018 academic year. When I was thinking about what I would say today, I began with the word convocation, a formal assembly or a coming together. You can think of the word convene. We come together for a special purpose for a convocation. The purpose of our gathering today is to kick off the school year. If you look around you, you will see most of the people who make up this community and who will share in our year together. Today, we welcome back many of you, and we extend a special welcome to the nearly 140 of you who are just joining us. As you know, your classmates come from all over the country and all over the world, from as far away as Bangladesh or Austria, California or Oregon, or from as close by as New Hampshire or here in Massachusetts. The diversity of our population is something we not only embrace, but we strive for. And it's an amazing way for you to experience the world right here in Ashburnham. Recently, I spoke to an alum from the class of 2013, who, when I asked her what, if anything, she would change about her 4 years at Cushing, she said, "I wish I had branched out more. I wish I had let myself get to know more of the people who weren't like me. When I got to college," she said, "I decided I wasn't going to make that mistake again, and I met so many interesting people, and I'm a better person for it." So think about that too, as you enter into the school year with an open mind and an open heart. Wherever you're from and whatever brought you here to Cushing, whether it was to study mathematics, or to challenge your artistic side in the studios or on the stage, or to compete on one of our sports teams, you all bring something unique and special. What contributions do you want to make to the community this year? What new things do you want to try? As you go through the handshake line today, which is one of the favorite traditions here at Cushing, look your teachers and your classmates in the eye, shake their hands, and think about how we are going to work together to make this a great year for Cushing Academy. Some of the people you shake hands with today will be your teachers, your dorm parents, your coaches, your advisors. Some will be your classmates, your dorm mates, your teammates. And we will experience not only that tradition, but many others at Cushing this year. Mountain Day, Diversity Day, Tony Fisher Day, Cushing Olympics, and even things like our weekly assemblies, all opportunities that bring us together as we are today for a shared experience. I'm sure you've all seen this, but we have lots of exciting things happening on the campus today, too. We have an almost new state-of-the-art fitness facility. We just opened 2 beautiful new dormitories. We completed a new turf field this summer. Soon, we will open a new ice rink. And while we will all endure some growing pains this year, next fall, we will have a new dining facility and a completely renovated Ash dormitory. And so all of this brings us to, this is a very special time to be a Penguin. And you're all here because of what you bring to this community. Together, let's make 2017-2018 a wonderful school year. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the start of the 2017-2018 school year, to my colleagues, the administration, and to all of you, the student body, especially to the members of the class of 2018. This is your year. When I was asked to be the convocation speaker, I struggled to come up with a topic, but in a moment of clarity, it hit me. As you are probably guessing, I'm here today to talk to you about one of my t-shirts. To start, however, I would like to give you some background and tell you a little about my story. In the fall of 1988, my wife and I were living in Pennsylvania, and I was working at a private day school just north of Pittsburgh. My older daughter, Mackenzie, was less than a year old. At that time, my parents were living in a small town about 10 miles west of Exeter, New Hampshire. My dad went to the doctor for his annual physical. He was feeling fine, but the routine checkup took a very difficult turn. His blood work showed that he had an incurable type of cancer, multiple myeloma. He was 2 weeks into a brand new job, but he had to retire in order to have an appropriate time for his treatment. 2 years later, shortly after Cammie was born, we decided to move to New Hampshire to be close to my parents. In addition to allowing us to be helpful to my parents, the move brought me back to Cushing, something I am still grateful for. A couple of years later, despite the best efforts of the doctors and nurses, the treatments available to my dad stopped working. With no other options, he was given two choices. Number one, go home and enjoy his family as long as he lived. Or number two, go to the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston and enter into clinical trials to help the physicians further their research. My dad had benefited greatly from previous cancer patients' selfless acts of participating in these trials, and he did not hesitate to say yes. Through the various protocols my dad endured, he helped further the treatment research and extended his life for more than 2 years, allowing Cammie and Mackenzie to grow older and develop lasting memories of Bumpa, something for which we are eternally grateful. After my dad passed, I decided to do what I could to give back in some small way. For me, this took the form of signing up to ride the Pan Mass Challenge. The PMC is a 2-day, 192-mile bike ride that raises money for Dana-Farber. This allowed me to give back in a small way to an organization that had given so much to my dad and our family. Last month, I rode the PMC for the 8th time, and I look forward to doing so for many years to come. By no means at all is my story unique, and the important part of my talk today is about just some of the amazing people we have in our community and how they consistently, in many different ways, participate in events that are for the benefit of others. It is abundantly obvious that I am not a svelte young man. The thought of running a marathon is one that scares me. However, doing so is the method that a number of the role models sitting amongst us today have chosen. Last spring, Mr. Caswell ran Boston Marathon for Dana-Farber, and Mr. Santos ran the Falmouth Road Race for the same cause. They both are hoping to run Boston this coming spring to further their support of Dana-Farber. 5 different times, Ms. Roller made the commitment to train and raise funds by also running the Boston Marathon. She never wavered in her dedication to the cause, despite having to battle through a number of difficult injuries. In addition to her 5 charity marathons, Ms. Roller has also run a 6th in memory of all those who lost their lives on September 11th and to honor all of the volunteers. The amount of training it takes to successfully run a marathon is significant. Making the commitment to do so once is quite impressive. Incredibly, Mr. Troy, in memory of his father, has dedicated himself to the Boston Marathon and raising money for Dana-Farber each of the past 18 years. Currently, he is training for number 19. That's just simply amazing. In the vein of doing something in memory of another person, Mr. Stone took on a wonderful task. A number of years ago, he made the commitment to run 10 marathons in memory of his brother who passed away. He recently completed the last of those marathons. What an amazing gesture. In addition, Mr. Stone has also given back to our local community by volunteering countless hours of his time as a Boy Scout leader in the Ashburnham area. Participating in athletic-based events and/or ones that raise money are popular methods of giving back, but there are many other ways to help make the lives of others better. He does not ride the Pan Mass Challenge, but Michael Haley, one of the chefs in the dining hall, has been volunteering for the PMC for many years. He is the voice of the first rest stop, yelling out to warn the riders that the entrance is a sharp right-hand turn. It is wonderful seeing him there each year, and he is a great support to the thousands of riders. Recently, the tragedy that has occurred in Houston is on everyone's mind. Many people throughout the country are involved in the relief efforts to help all of those that were affected. When Hurricane Sandy hit New Jersey several years ago, Cushing sent a group of students led by Ms. Brown, our former counselor, and her husband, down for a week over spring break to assist with the cleanup. In addition, the Browns led trips to West Virginia on 2 consecutive spring breaks to help build houses for the needy through the Fuller Center for Housing. Ms. Bro, Mr. Caswell, and Mr. Sheehan all donated their time to one or both of these causes. 4 years ago, the members of the Cushing community raised $10,000 to help build a school in Africa. Led by Ms. Ohm and Mr. Santos, the group of students spent 10 days in Tanzania doing physical labor to help complete the school. Nick Kuchta, a pillar of our incredible facilities department, is passionate about giving back to others in a number of different ways. He and his wife open their home to provide adult foster care to those in need. In addition, Nick is a certified instructor for an international scouting group and travels across the country at his own expense to assist in leadership training. More locally, Nick, through his church, actively participates in community service in the Gardner area. He truly has a heart for helping others. Mr. and Mrs. Wenning have spent years organizing events and supporting Autism Speaks, an organization that raises awareness of the challenges that face families with an autistic child or adult. In addition, they have helped families all across the state of Massachusetts by teaching them how to advocate for their legal rights with their local municipalities. By doing so, they have helped countless families improve the quality of their lives and of their loved ones. Another wonderful example of helping bring joy to others are the Salvucci's. A couple of years ago, they purchased a dog, Lego, to have as a family pet, but more importantly, with the idea of training it as a therapy dog. After at least 4 different obedience classes, Lego emerged as a certified therapy dog, and the Salvucci's were appropriately trained as well. Every Wednesday, they take Lego over to Gardner to a retirement and rehabilitation facility. With his visits, Lego brings significant happiness to the residents, especially in the memory unit. If you have a chance to ask Mrs. or Mr. Salvucci about their visits, they would be happy to tell you how much giving back in this manner has enriched their own lives. I am sure they would also be willing to share their story with you as well. As you can see, our community is filled with generous and thoughtful people who live their lives searching for ways to give back in a meaningful way. And I was only able to mention a few of them, and there are many more. Okay, so you're thinking to yourself, how does this relate to my t-shirt? Taking that first step to give back, volunteer, or sign up to raise money for a cause can be daunting. Many times, people are willing to take part in an event that is bigger than themselves, but committing can be difficult. A number of years ago, the Pan Mass Challenge came up with a slogan to encourage people to participate. And that's where my t-shirt comes in. It says, commit, you will figure it out. Okay? Just commit and you will figure it out. I would like you all to think about that phrase and do your best to remember it. When you're in a position to give back in some capacity, do not hesitate. Commit to a cause that you are passionate about, whatever it may be. The details will work themselves out. You will soon be contributing to a greater cause, and if you are like most people, and I'm sure you are, you will find the experience incredibly rewarding. Truly, I almost feel guilty riding the Pan Mass Challenge each year because I personally take so much from participating in the event. In 1980, a young man by the name of Billy Starr had a vision of how he was going to help make a difference in the lives of others. As a bike rider, he decided to start riding to raise money for cancer research. When he began the PMC, he did not have any idea as to how he was going to make it work, but he committed and figured it out. Billy's dream has turned into the largest athletic fundraising event in the world, having contributed almost $600 million to Dana-Farber Cancer Institute through the GENIE Fund. Imagine if he had not been willing to take the risk in naming his creation, in creating something much bigger than himself. Without Billy's vision and commitment to the cause, Dana-Farber would be a vastly different hospital, and their cancer research would not have progressed to the point where it is today. When I first began my teaching career at Cushing in 1986, I can see Mr. Devon's students out there trying to do some calculations. I'll help you out here. No, I am nowhere near Mr. Devon's age. He is much older. When I began teaching here in 1986, there were many teachers and administrators that helped me through the beginning of my career. However, there was one teacher that had been at Cushing for a couple of years that I quietly admired from a distance. She had come to Cushing after spending 2 full years with her husband, giving back to others, and putting their lives on hold by joining the Peace Corps. The selfless attitude she displayed in doing this is exactly the way she approached her teaching. Her students were her passion, and she gave them everything she had. Her meticulous preparation and the number of hours she spent with her students was something I tried to emulate. Upon my return to Cushing in 2001, fortunately, she was still here and working just as hard to make sure her students had the best possible experience. Fast forward about 15 years, and Cushing found itself in a situation of needing someone to head up the school while we went through the process of hiring a new headmaster. I cannot imagine our Board of Trustees had to give much thought as to who the appropriate person was to work side by side with Ms. Pollock to lead the school forward. Despite the scope of the job and the fact that she would need to give up her teaching responsibilities, she agreed to do so. Mrs. Lee did so because Cushing Academy and all of you are her passion, and her way of giving back to the community was to take on this incredibly important role. This is just a snapshot of how Mrs. Lee has given all she can to the Cushing community and is a big reason many of you are living in one of the new dormitories named after her, Lee House. I know that many of you already give back selflessly to others. You have your own stories. If you do not already do so, be part of something bigger than yourself and give back. You probably will not create a charity that donates hundreds of millions of dollars, nor have a dorm named after you, but every single act matters, no matter how small you may think it is. Find your motivation, find your passion, find your cause, find your story. Commit. You will figure it out.
Welcome everyone to the 2017 and 2018 school year. As a four-year senior, I'm honored to be one of the co-presidents to represent the student body. Most of the seniors went through the initial stages of college application this summer, looking for colleges and trying to express in writing why they should be interested in us. When I sat down to write my college essays this summer, my confidence shrank and I felt disoriented. I've always thought that I knew myself pretty well, but due to the fact that I had to condense my identity into 650 words, I was suddenly overcome by an overwhelming anxiety. My future was about to be judged on a single page of ink, a shallow representation of myself. I wrote and discarded multiple drafts because they didn't represent me. Since I felt compelled to stand out among thousands of applicants, nothing could possibly satisfy me. It seemed like everything I've done was not special enough. The problem with me at this time was that I was focusing on the differences with other people. For instance, during summer break, a friend recommended me a Chinese book, and I tried hard to understand it, but I couldn't. I kept losing the subtle cultural messages that the author was trying to convey. Hoping to improve my cultural awareness, I started researching some of the obvious differences between Korea and China. How the traffic lights work differently, how food recipes differ, how music sounds different, and so on. I was curious to find out if life in China was actually different from the life that I live. So I asked a few of my Cushing friends about what I had discovered through my research. Are these things really true? They're so interesting. But the answers that came back were not what I expected. Although my friends admitted that there were some differences, they seemed to think that the gap was not huge as I thought. Through the conversations with my Cushing friends, I learned that we are all human beings and share more similarities than differences. If we focus too much on what is different, we sometimes neglect how much we are similar. And despite our skin color, nationality, or food preferences, we have much more in common. And to me, Cushing is the place where I found out that ultimately, we are all people with two eyes, one nose, and one mouth, and we love good jokes. And we try hard to pursue our passion. Focusing on differences does nothing more than inducing fear and segregation. I hope that everyone can enjoy the harmony within our community this year and make the most out of the diversity we have here. Try what you like and be with people who you want to know better, who you want to understand better. I know it's hard to come out of your comfort zone, but maybe we are more similar to each other than we think we are. Start with a simple hello, and it'll make a difference. This idea of unity is at the heart of what we as a student leader want to achieve this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Good afternoon, Cushing. My name is Ethan Yu, a four-year senior from Beijing, China. It is my honor to speak here today. However, first, I want to start by congratulating all of our new penguins. You made the right choice. Welcome to the family. Returners, welcome back. It's great to see my brothers and sisters again. It's going to be a unique year. Cushing has the kindest faculty and staff who are not just teachers, but in fact, your close friends. Cushing has a broad curriculum that offers a variety of courses and with suitable challenges. The visual and performing arts have always been among Cushing's signature programs. And Cushing is also proud of its widely recognized sports programs. For example, last year, our varsity basketball team won the NAPSAC AA title while making the Elite Eight in the National Prep Championship. Our varsity hockey team also presented us with multiple great comeback games in the playoff, not to mention our soccer, volleyball, lacrosse, football, baseball, and many other teams' bright future. This 2017-18 year is destined to be a unique one. Our aim this year is to integrate our international students with our domestic students. Cushing's diversity is what makes us different from all other schools. Living with students from more than 30 countries is not something you can achieve at all schools. And we want to utilize this awesome opportunity in order to maximize the benefits diversity can bring. But most importantly, we want to do so in an interesting way. Working together with our Student Faculty Senate, we will try to organize more community-wise activities. For example, we will try to plan events like impromptu ice cream socials during the week. We will also try to have a campus-wise, culturally oriented field trip day. And based on the success from what I did for the headmaster of the day last year, I have realized that family bonds are cemented on the dining table. Therefore, we will try to make a special cultural food day once per term and possibly making food education a Cushing tradition. Through these activities and others, we can achieve a more inclusive Cushing family. No matter if you are a senior sitting in the front or if you are a freshman somewhere in the back. Remember, you have a very important role in the Cushing family. When we look back in May, I want all of us to remember this year, not only as a school year, but as the one and only 2017-18 year. And let's make memories starting right now. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Burke and Jeannie and Ethan, for the wonderful words, and Ms. Pollock for a very warm welcome. I'd like at this time to introduce the wonderful new members of our faculty. Faculty, please stand when I call your name and remain standing until all the new faculty are introduced. Audience members, kindly hold your applause until the end of the new faculty introductions, and then we'll welcome everyone warmly. So, Miss Sarah Catlin is joining us, and she will be the Associate Dean of College Counseling. Miss Martha Haggerty will join the English Department. Mr. Brian Jurek will be our Associate Dean of College Counseling and will also be a member of the English Department. Mr. Tristan Kishonis is an English Department Teaching Fellow. Mr. Tyler McFarland is a 2012 Cushing graduate who has joined us to teach mathematics and economics. Ms. Alexandra Slayton will be a teacher in the English as a Second Language Department. Ms. Catherine Kaylee Spillhouse will be a member of our English Department. Mr. Tyler Stillings will join our History Department. Mr. Tanapat Trayanurak, otherwise known to his fellow colleagues as ICE, will be joining the English as a Second Language Department, as well as other departments, as a teaching fellow. Dr. Jennifer Willis will be joining our Academic Support Department. Mr. Josh Quinones will be joining our English Department. And Ms. Janine Eschenbach, who is in the back of the chapel, is our Associate Dean of Students. One more. In absentia today, we are very fortunate to have a faculty member who left for a while, who will actually be joining us this year. Mr. Steve Jacobs will also be joining us as our varsity boys, our ice hockey coach. We are very, very happy to have you all join us. Welcome. A September tradition at many universities and independent schools, Convocation began at Cushing over 100 years ago. And I love history, and I love reading about Cushing history. So in today's talk, I'm going to be sharing some of that with you. Because you are here, you should know the community that you're joining. Though Convocation was replaced by other opening activities for several decades, it was reinstituted in 2013 to unite the community in spirit and overall purpose at the start of the school year. It's an opportunity, as Ms. Pollock mentioned, to welcome each of you back formally and to share some of Cushing's history, its mission, values, and aspirations. Most of all, it's a time for each of us to reflect on our good fortune to be part of the Cushing family, as well as the many opportunities available here to pursue your passions, to explore new interests, to build relationships, and to prepare for success in college and in life. Convocation today is followed by two other school traditions. Our all-school handshake, which will occur directly after Convocation, and then we'll have our first formal Cushing dinner together to open the school year. As returning students know, Cushing was founded by a successful businessman who was born and raised in Ashburnham. Thomas Parkman Cushing was the youngest of 8 children, and his father was the pastor of the local church for 55 years. In fact, he came to Ashburnham about 4 years after the town started. The family was very poor, so Thomas was not able to go to boarding school. He went to the local school where he got a very good education until he was about 10. Then, when he was about 8 years old, his mother, to make ends meet, decided that she was going to open a small store in their house. And on vacations, and when he had completed elementary school in Ashburnham, he actually helped his mom out in the store. Having graduated from Harvard in the 1700s, Thomas's father and grandfather were very well educated. And though Ashburnham did not afford Thomas the abundant educational opportunities and resources that were available in Cambridge, he attended the school and he did reading outside of school. From all accounts, after moving to Boston in 1800 to help his older brother who had started a business there, Thomas continued to educate himself through reading widely, acquiring fluency in French and Spanish, appreciating and collecting art, playing the flute, singing, and developing relationships with businessmen and intellectuals in the Boston area. He made his home there for many years on Vernon Street. He was an autodidact, a self-taught man from humble beginnings with a passion for lifelong learning. By the time Mr. Cushing was 63 years old, which was old in the 1800s, he was well-to-do, at least by Ashburnham standards in the middle of the 19th century, and he had begun to contemplate his legacy. What was he going to leave behind? What was that mark he would make on his community? On July 30th, 1850, he completed his will, and I'm going to quote from some research that I did, 18 pages of closely written script with a wax seal and his signature, Thomas P. Cushing. In item 18 of that will, Mr. Cushing penned his intention in a very long 19th century sentence, which I'm going to read to you. This is one sentence. And whereas it is my opinion that the stability of our laws and the safety of our government and the right direction of our institutions, the preservation of virtue and of good morals, and in short, the well-being and happiness of society depend in a great degree upon the general diffusion of practical and useful knowledge among the people, I am particularly desirous of using a portion of my estate for improving the education and thus of strengthening and enlarging the minds of the rising and of future generations. That's you. In fact, Mr. Cushing envisioned that his fortune would be used to establish 2 schools, one for boys and one for girls. Each child had to be over 10 years old, and he wanted this to happen in his native town of Ashburnham. At the time of his passing in 1854, Mr. Cushing was generous given his means, but his fortune was far too insufficient to create 2 schools. So, Cushing's Board of Trustees at the time was very flexible and creative and nimble, words that you will hear this year. And they decided to apply for a charter for this school as a coeducational school. There were very few coeducational schools in existence in the mid-1800s. So he wanted this school to graduate students who could form opinions and had characters which will constitute them intelligent, wise, leading, and useful members of society. In 1865, Cushing's charter for a coeducational school was approved. Planning and construction of the main building ensued, and Cushing opened its doors with one building, this building, in September of 1875. Today, 152 years after our incorporation and 142 years after the start of its first classes, the Academy still expresses the essence of Mr. Cushing's vision in our mission statement. Cushing exists for students and develops curious, creative, and confident learners and leaders. This mission is our common purpose, and it's our promise to you. And it's what your teachers, dorm parents, the staff here, all of us at Cushing will work strenuously with you to achieve. We can't do it alone. You need to partner with us to achieve that promise, to achieve the mission that Thomas Parkman Cushing had. Becoming a leading and useful member of society, in other words, becoming a leader, takes many forms. You heard that this afternoon from Mr. Burke. You've heard it from Jeannie and Ethan. I'm certain that both of them will work hard with the representatives from each class to achieve the goals they mutually establish. Your student leaders give of themselves to promote unity, understanding, strong bonds, and a friendly, engaging culture here on campus within this diverse community. Mr. Burke leads in another way. The members of the faculty that he mentioned lead in yet other ways. Along with the members of Mr. Burke's cycling team, think of all that he has done to help fund cancer research. Just like the members of this faculty and Mr. Burke, there are plenty of opportunities here for you to lead. There are group activities on campus and off campus. It doesn't mean being elected to a position. You can set a good example. You can lead by example. You can show moral courage. The list goes on. Indeed, starting with Mr. Cushing's generosity in 1854, giving back at Cushing is a very long-standing tradition. 100 years ago, at the start of academic year 1917-1918, students gathered in this very room, and Harvey Cowell, for whom this space is named, was beginning his 30th year as the headmaster. Among those assembled were 39 seniors, most of whom were from Massachusetts. There were several students from New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, a few from New York, and the two seniors who lived farthest away hailed from Des Moines, Iowa, and Shanghai, China. The seniors had been through a number of challenges in their time at the Academy, including the Great Fire that destroyed Ashburnham House in April of 1915 and claimed the life of Frank Hardy, a beloved teacher and coach who died while trying to get all of the boys and the faculty families out of ash. A second blow came when Headmaster Cowell discovered that the insurance money from the fire amounted to $38,000, and he was going to need $93,000 to rebuild this building. Most of it was gutted at that time. Through small donations and sacrifice, faculty and students even rationed coal that heated these buildings in the cold New England winter. Through their sacrifices, student leaders, their families, alumni, the Board of Trustees were able to raise $55,000 in amounts of $1 to $100. And Ash House was rebuilt in the fall of 1916. In addition to giving back to the Restoration Fund, that's what they called it, many of the senior girls in 1917 participated in the ongoing national struggle for women's suffrage. Women still hadn't earned the right to vote. And so, as school was opening in September of 1917, they were reading news that 10 women had been arrested in front of the White House, protesting for their right to vote. So our senior girls that year and in future fought very hard for student suffrage, for women's suffrage. Furthermore, 2 senior boys, members of the senior class, had to withdraw that year because they were drafted into the military. The United States had gotten into World War I in April of the previous spring, and the war effort was on. Congress had passed a selective service law, and seniors left to join the Army. Many of our alums, male alums and some female alums, were helping in the war effort. And Cushing students wrote letters, sent cards, sent publications. Actually, I'd like to read you a quote. Members of the boys' football team even knitted, quote, squares of yellow, blue, green, and purple yarn to make Afghans for the soldiers who were cold in the trenches. In his heartfelt thank you note, one of the Cushing alums, Edward Willis, wrote, "The air is filled with a multitude of whistling shells exploding in the air with thunderous crashes. Now and then the sharp rattle of a machine gun can be heard through a lull in the fighting. And then you will hear a whistling sound, and then perhaps a big glare of flame accompanied by the most terrible crash you can imagine." Throughout 1917 and 18, soldiers' heartfelt notes of gratitude for the letters, the supplies, the cards from Cushing students and faculty were moving. These outreach efforts from student leaders made a difference to our Cushing alums, some of whom sacrificed their lives for the war effort. Today, that tradition of outreach continues in campus efforts such as Stick It to Cancer, Pink the Rink, Ashburnham, Westminster Community Benefit, as Ms. Pollock mentioned, the Tony Fisher Day of Service to Others, the International Dinner, our student-initiated TEDx conferences, our diversity series, the art shows, the musicals, the performances that we share with each other here on campus, our student and faculty's efforts at the Boston Marathon, the long tradition of giving back at Cushing continues. Mr. Watkins, class of 1956, and the late Mr. Fisher, class of 1969, among others, have shown their philanthropic leadership, not only at Cushing, but also to important social causes and institutions throughout the country. In fact, when Mr. Fisher died, those of us who were on the faculty were amazed to read his obituary in the New York Times. He gave so much of himself and his family fortune to causes we never even knew. We actually thought that we were the one and only benefactor of his generosity. After graduation, some of our more well-known recent graduates, like Nate Burkus, John Cena, and Megan Duggan, among, again, many others, have continued to give back to important charitable causes in more public ways. But I remember how much they gave back when they were students here. It began here. They were very important in terms of the time and the effort they made to make Cushing a stronger, more cohesive community. I challenge each of you to find a way to give back in ways that are small or large, to give to causes greater than yourself. I hope that your contributions to our community will lead to a lifetime of giving back to worthy causes. If you need support or ideas, you know who to reach out to, because they are amazing role models. Each of the speeches given this afternoon complements Cushing's core values, which stem from Thomas Parkman's Cushing's vision to graduate intelligent, wise, leading, and useful members of society. Toward that end, we all seek to understand others, as well as respect and value differences, which is essential for a meaningful and fulfilling life. Thank you, Jeannie and Ethan, for articulating this message so clearly. We also seek to develop a sense of social responsibility, moral courage, gratitude, integrity, and humility, modeled by trusted mentors and peers, which paves the way for becoming an active and contributing member of our school, community, society, and the world at large. Thank you, Mr. Burke, for sharing one of the ways that you give back. In closing, I'd like to remind all of us that through our efforts to live, learn, and work together, we will develop firm roots at Cushing. That root structure will give us the strength and the confidence to make a positive difference here and in the world. Thank you.